Let's call this meeting to order September 5th, 2023 at 6:30 PM. Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Mahoney,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Jeffrey. Trustee Westcott,
Yes.
Trustee White,
Here.
Trustee Cohen. Here. Trustee Tapey. Here. Trustee Bristow. Here.
Forum, do I have approval of the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Tapey.
Yes.
Trustee White,
Yes.
Trustee Westcott,
Yes.
Trustee Bristow,
Yes.
Trustee Cohen,
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney.
Yes. Motion carries. All right, next item is public comments. Did we have anyone? No. Okay, and we have the consent agenda, the payment approval report in the amount of $159,513.69, as well as the August 15th, 2023 minutes. Resolution 2023-33, as well as resolution 2023-34. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Cohen,
Yes.
Mayor Mahoney,
Yes.
Trustee White,
Yes.
Trustee Tapey,
Yes.
Trustee Westcott,
Yes.
Trustee Bristow,
Yes.
All right, motion carries. All right, next item is the elevated water storage tank. Mr. Larman. Have the con.
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. It was almost a year ago to the day where the board approved resurrecting the elevated water storage tank project that began in 2017. So tonight we have an update for you, kind of a brief overview of where we were, where we are, and where we're going, some timelines associated with the project. And we'll be looking for a little bit of direction on some fine detail of the tank, specifically whether or not the board would like to have a logo or lock buoy or anything on the tank itself. So with that, we have Mandy Rasmussen and Shane White here from JVA, and they'll give you an update.
All right, good evening. I'm Mandy Rasmussen with JVA, Senior Project Manager. You'll hear from Shane here in a little bit. She's been our Senior Project Engineer on the project, and I'll go through all the details. But I wanted to give a quick reminder. I think Mayor Mahoney, you remember the first round with the tank and determining what size and what shape and where the tank would go and all that. The uphill battle, as well as Steve Samey, Town Administrator. But the rest of you saw me earlier this year when we got approval for the town to take over the purchase. And that's what held us up the first time around, was securing that site. So I appreciate that vote. We ran with that. Surveys being completed now there. We're working on the final design package. And Shane will give you some updates on schedule here on out, and more details on the tank itself. So if you go to the county website, you'll see the town owns the tank site proper now. So we're all set there. Also wanted to give you a heads up that we'll be at the Fall Festival and available to help answer questions of the public. So those as Chris said, no big approval needed tonight, mostly just input on some of those items in the design, including the logo and other features. And also anything we should be prepared to talk to the public about at the Fall Festival.
All right.
You're Shane.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shane White with JVA Senior Project Engineer and have been in a little more of the details on this project, but I was just going to give a brief overview of why we are constructing this elevated tank, project needs, kind of an overview of the tank site, the project, and then I can also speak to the proposed project schedule and next steps that we're going to be doing for this project. And I think it is. So this project, as Mandy said, it's been a multi-iteration project, and now that the site has been selected and obtained, we're moving forward. But this was identified in the master plan and was part of the capital improvement plan for constructing a new tank. And really the need for the tank is shown in this chart at the bottom. And what we've done in the master plan and have since updated and as part of detailed design is determined for the entire town operational water demand. So that would be 4 hours of peak day flow, fire flow requirements for storage to meet fire flow requirements at your hydrants, emergency storage, which was in the event of an extended power outage, 24 hours of your summer average day demand, to obtain a total storage goal of 1.55 million. And with the current tanks, potable water storage tanks as installed, we have a storage deficit of 0.3 million gallons. So that was a current need that this tank is serving. And almost even more importantly, by having an elevated water storage tank, you will no longer be relying on your high service pumps. So there's high service pumps right out here at the current water plant. And then there's also the Silver Peaks booster station, and those pressurize the entire distribution system. So by having an elevated storage tank, the water that is currently stored in that tank, 2 million gallons here, would be able to pressurize the system just by gravity. So in an event that you have pump failures or a power outage, you have that redundancy built in with a composite elevated storage tank. This is just a
Real quick.
Sure.
On your chart here, talk about the storage deficit. So with that tank in place, that would put us at well above that.
Yes.
1.7.
And yes, correct. We would be above that. I have I think it's 2 slides up that kind of explain total storage volume across the whole system. And one of the reasons I think why you're not just, there's a number of reasons why you wouldn't just build a 0.3 million gallon tank, but the benefit of having 2 million gallons at the elevated elevation is you're getting all of that redundancy in that event of a power outage and not relying on your booster pumps. This is a kind of a snip of our hydraulic profile. This is one of the things that we submit to CDPHE, Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, as part of our design package. We submitted that last month, and that is a package that they review to give permit approval for the project. This is just one of the drawings that kind of shows a cut section view of the existing plant, the existing storage tanks, the 2 high service pumps, and you can see the proposed 2 million gallon elevated storage tank is at a much higher elevation, and that's the elevation equivalent essentially of what those booster pumps are currently doing. We also have there a future elevated storage tank. I'll show on a few slides here what's required for projected build out, but with the 2 million gallon tank, you will have 3.25 million gallons of storage, which will more than meet your fire flow requirements, your operational requirements, and your current emergency requirements. And in fact, it can build out to essentially a population of just over 19,200 people is what a 2 million gallon tank plus the other tanks can accommodate. At the build out, and this build out was determined in the master plan, and I understand there is a revised master plan going on right now. But I think that it might revise some of the growth rates for when we would need to get to a build out tank. But I would assume that the build out is more based on lots and developable area, but that's currently estimated to be 25,000 people. And to achieve that, you would just need one more 1 million gallon tank. And I'm actually going to skip to this slide before I go to the other slide. So this slide shows the general location of the tank on kind of the top side of Ruby Avenue, and then the future Himalaya Drive, which right now I think is a dirt road / dead end there, but that's where the tank is sited. And then this drawing is part of our design package. And you can see the turnoff. This is an aerial view as if you're just looking from the top down from the sky. And you can see on the south side, there's the 2 million gallon elevated storage tank there. And then there's also site grading that would be put in place for a future tank, that 1 million gallon tank. And then sufficient turnarounds for truck turnarounds and access, and grading with positive drainage and storm drainage to Ruby Avenue to the south to tie into that system. And this tank, what was previously selected was a elevated composite storage tank. So if you've seen just the tank next door, the Brighton tank, that is a 2 million gallon composite elevated storage tank. So it's composite because the column of the tank is concrete, and then the top of the tank is structural welded steel. But that is the type of tank that we've selected to move forward with. And generally, the tank has similar support diameters and heights to the Brighton tank. Before I go into like project schedule or anything, I can, if there's any questions on the project itself before I talk about next steps, but that's kind of the overview of the elevated storage tank site. Great, so next steps. So in terms of funding for this project, we are working towards a multi-agency funding approach to help offset and mitigate costs for this project, just to offset any costs to the Water Enterprise Fund. So as part of that, we are working with the State Revolving Fund, which is the grants and loans arm of CDPHE. They put together grant loan packages for projects just like this, with potentially up to 50% of the project being grant funded through their program, and then a 20-year low interest loan or 30-year low interest loan. But not asking for any decisions tonight, just wanted to give an update of what that process looks like. So we have completed a project needs assessment and have had a preliminary meeting with the SRF unit to talk about this project and talk about potential loan packages and what that might look like. We're also planning on applying for a DOLA Energy Impact Grant, which is up to $1 million of grant money that would help offset the total cost for this project. And the SRF loan can be used as matching funds with that. But the large, in terms of milestones and hoops to jump through, it would be the SRF project. So as you can see here, we've submitted project needs assessment for that, basis of design report. As part of the loan application, a public meeting is required. So that would be a public meeting that could coincide with a meeting such as this, but it requires a 30-day publication in the paper for that. And it would basically just be an update similar to this of, this is the project that we're intending on doing, and we are intending on applying for this loan, and we wanted to just get public input and public comment on the project, but no further than that in terms of details at that point. In terms of a loan application and really committing to a loan amount and understanding what that looks like, that would be when we apply actually for the SRF loan, which realistically, we put 2 loan cycle dates, but I would say it's more likely to be that January 15th date. So the intention would be to complete our final plans and specifications for the project, to take the project out to bid, to get state permit approval for the project, to bid the project in November, to get hopefully a number of bids back from a number of contractors to understand project cost. And then based on the recommended the recommended awards to a contractor, we would understand the project cost. And then when it comes time to apply for the SRF loan application, we would know exactly the amount that would need to be applied for to offset whatever other grant funding was obtained. So that's that schedule in terms of bidding a project in November, SRF loan in January. Other sources, like I said, December, we would likely apply for DOLA, award a construction contract, in January, assuming all of the funding has lined up and we're where we want to be with the project. And then construction start likely April 2024. And that was a lot of dates and a lot of milestones. So if there's any questions on that, the only other thing in here that's kind of peppered in is this environmental assessment. And what that is that's an environmental clearance process that any project that's funded through the SRF program has to go through. So it's different environmental agencies like Section 106, State Historic Preservation Office, wetlands, all of that. We need to obtain environmental clearance as part of this process. So it has kind of a coinciding timeline with the loan application and construction start date, but those are those dates that are on there too. True. Ultimately, you do have to, ask every single agency, is there an impact here? And they write that, and ideally you obtain a finding of no significant impact is what we would be going for with that process. That process does have a public meeting component to it, which we've slated for November 2023. Realistically, that date could be any time prior to really loan execution. But ideally you would obtain that finding of no significant impact. You have to obtain that prior to your construction start date, and physical shovels in the ground is really the critical path there for that. Correct. It is a significant amount of effort from the contractor's part. You can go, it's somewhat phased with like the site prep, site development, but in terms of constructing a 2 million gallon elevated storage tank just for the actual erection of the tank, the column. It depends on the contractor and who we award the contract to. But as part of all of those bids, we would require a construction schedule, but you might be able to.
Yeah, the trick is also when you bid, so it could be a year and a half if we bid differently. They want to build during the summer.
Yeah.
And so they're looking.
They don't want to be on
Bid in
top of a
Jan-
tower in the middle of winter?
So a lot of it is ordering the steel,
Yeah.
getting the submittals, finalizing the design, and then targeting one of the 2 summers.
Okay. Anyone have anything? Trustee
Just
Davey?
real quick, the public meeting for the SRF loan and then the one for the environmental assessment. Does the SRF loan public meeting have to, like, could we have them together, or does one have to happen before the other?
We certainly could put those together. I think we had originally talked about having the SRF one, the public meeting for the loan has to occur prior to the loan application. And if we were to apply for the loan in November, we had talked about that being at end of October, which is likely before we would be ready for the environmental public meeting. So you don't have to complete your full environmental assessment, but you have to be far enough in the process to generally know your anticipated impacts and agency input from all the different agencies we reach out to. So that's why we placed that in November. But realistically, if we apply for the SRF loan application in January, we could do both of these meetings in November or December.
Trustee Cohen?
For the environmental impact assessment, does that just address the tank when it's final and standing, or is it the whole process? So any impacts of the construction process?
It is the entire project start to finish. So it would look at construction activities and temporary impacts from construction activities. So we have to reach out to Air Quality Control Division. It also looks at, I'm trying to remember what they're called, but compounded activities. So if you develop something, does that bring more people in because you developed it and now you have this almost domino effect of environmental impacts? In our case, I would say that's not a concern. But yeah, it looks at projects start to finish.
Trustee White, did you have anything?
I do not, thank you.
All right. Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
everybody.
So we are looking for just a little bit of direction as to whether the board would like the town logo or lock buoy, or just have a plain white tank up there. Are any thoughts on that?
I'd like to see our logo and name up there.
Second
This
that.
is not costing us an extra million.
I don't think it costs an extra million, but that,
This one's 50,000. So you could have it. That what you're saying, because it's multicolor, it's about 50,000 cost. And then I think the option is, which direction would you want it? Would you want one when you're coming this way, and one when you're coming that way? Those are the considerations.
right.
There's your concerns, go ahead.
Why would we not want our
Well,
name and logo?
Yeah,
Because of the
but do we want to
50,000?
do two? Do we want to do, yeah,
So we don't need an answer on that tonight. It's just something that while we're going through the design process for us to factor into the total cost of the project and be able to, put the bid package together appropriately. So we'll come up with some options and I'll present what we come up with to the board for a final direction before we get too far in the process.
no, I'd like to have.
So I work for a corporation, which means I've been through about 4,000 different changes in logos and directions. So I would just caution about putting a logo on something permanent like a water tank that is like getting a tattoo. Maybe just our town name would be, logos change over time. I don't know how many times ours has changed. I would just add that.
Trustee White, anything?
I would like to see the logo and the name in color like they are on our business cards at the bottom of our email. I think it shows pride of ownership, connects people to the tower that's standing there. And that too, if we're gonna have a tower that looks just like Brighton, we should at least have our name on it like they do.
Make it bigger.
All right, thanks. I think that gives us enough to be dangerous.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Okay. All right, the next item is the 2024 proposed budget. Ms. Rademacher, the table is yours. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Y'all hear me? Huh? What? Yeah. Okay, so before you, you have the first draft of the proposed budget for 2024. When we met, we had our board retreat in June 24th of 2023, this summer. And after that retreat, the consultant put out a summary of that meeting, listing the priorities that the goal had, the trustees had identified at that retreat. And then based on that, we started building the budget. So it's all based around the meeting on the 24th and what the staff took from that and what the consultant summarized for that. So with that said, first few slides are just our basic, our vision statements, our unifying goals, just to refresh everybody and to put it out there. And if any of those change, we would like to update those, but I think they're pretty good goals to stick with as the years go by. The governing board, I think you all know who you are. That's more of a informational for other people not so familiar with the town. So the next slide, the objectives. Again, so these were built on what we took away from the June 24th retreat to advance the annexation of properties east of I-76. We all know what that's referring to in general. You did give us the green light to, in anticipation of these annexations and the growth that's coming, to add some additional staff. And we did put a little caveat in there, in contingent in part upon development. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but we definitely do not want to be understaffed when and if all of these annexations occur. So you kind of take a risk and a gamble and hope and a prayer and invest in yourself and make sure that we're prepared for it when it happens. So, the next one was to, continue to accelerate the non-residential development. We need to focus on getting more commercial in town, and that will come eventually. After residential here is when the commercial will come, but we need to keep constantly promoting, to get more tax base in here in town. That's our revenue growth. Increasing and continue with the improvements that we've done with the communication between the residents and the town. I think we've made some big strides this year on improving that, and we will continue to do so in going forward. The next one was to create a capital improvement fund. I believe that'll be on the agenda next month for you to review that I think it's an ordinance, that ordinance to create that new fund. And then to explore creating a URA and a GID to fund the projects, especially some of the ones that we're hoping to annex in east of I-76. The next one was explore Lake Henry improvements. We're required, I think, in some part to get some improvements out there done. I think the comp plan will be looking very closely at Lake Henry and what the potential is for that area. For improvements and development. The trail system, expanded trail system. We got to get the first section of the trail built, and then we can go from there and see where that takes us. The other thing is to explore some ballot initiatives. Next year will be a quote Tabor year. It's an odd year, an even year, and we can have initiatives on there. We'll probably have marijuana if it passes in November. A question on there about some excise tax for that. There's some other ideas that are presented a little later on. Just don't want to overwhelm the ballot with, 3 or 4 ballot questions associated with taxing. That'll probably get people to shut down and just vote no on everything. So we got to be selective on what, if any, ballot questions we put on the November 24th. And the last one is to continue to promote the home rule and hopefully get that across the finish line and become a home rule community. And again, continue to promote community engagement. The next chart is a picture of organization. If we can, it'll click, yeah. We have an organizational chart. The outside consultants, I just wanted to remind everybody that we do still rely heavily on outside consultants, even with the additional staffing that we're proposing for 2024. You can never have totally everything in-house, not for a town our size. So we will continue to have outside consultants. And then the org chart is showing the addition of the new positions that were approved, which would be an engineer, a building technician, another police officer, PIO, and what was the other one? Another for public works crew. What was the title? Utilities technician. So those are incorporated into this chart, those additional FTEs. The proposed budget schedule. Now, this is where it is going to get a little complicated if Proposition HH passes. I won't be getting a final certification from the counties until the end of December. And so we'll have to just cross that bridge when we get to it. We'll come up with a plan of attack of what to do because we won't be able to have the budget, finalized in December as normal because we won't have the certifications yet from the county. So everything will get pushed back about a month. So we'll probably be having meetings at the beginning of January to approve the 2024 budget. Weld County has already said that if Proposition HH does pass, that they would get the final certification to us by December the 29th. So that doesn't give us any time really to have a meeting between then and the end of the year. So it would probably be that first meeting in January to certify the levies and pass the formal budget. So, but we'll work out all of those details when and if it does pass, in November. But other than that, we did get our preliminary certifications in August, on the 25th. Tonight's a work session just to go over the draft budget. October 3rd, that's when we will come back to you with a proposed budget that will need to be published by the 15th. So based on the meeting tonight, I will take any changes, additions, subtractions, whatever you all would like to see done before that October 3rd meeting for that first draft of the budget. And then in November, if we need some more work sessions, we can obviously plan another work session if needed. And then again, I have an asterisk by the December 5th. If Proposition HH does not pass, we will have it presented to the board on that December 5th meeting to adopt the budget.
There are legal ramifications if we don't publish the budget before the end of the year?
Well, I think everything is kind of in limbo right now with this whole Proposition HH. I don't know how they can hold us to having it ready by the end of the year when we won't have the levies and the certifications from the counties. So we're kind of in an unknown, but I can let Chris see if he wants to jump in on that one.
Yeah, I think every single municipality and special district and other local government counties are all in the same boat of trying to figure it out at the last minute. And I think once we have some better information about when it passes or if it passes, be better able to assess those deadlines. It may require some special meetings.
New Year's Eve, we can all meet on New Year's Eve and have a certification party. Okay, so the next one is just basically our 2024 goals. Again, those were based upon the retreat that we had in June, and also just ongoing commitments that the staff, like continuing to upgrade our aging fleet, completing the comprehensive plan and some master plans and things that we already have in process now, construction process, our programs and projects that we have that are ongoing. So those are basically all of the goals that we have listed there. And the last goal is to obviously host a really great 50th anniversary celebration. So we've got our fall festival coming up in a couple weeks. And then let the planning begin for the 50th, right? And we'll make that a really good event. But most of these things on here, we are either coming from the retreat or ongoing projects or, adding the additional FTEs and things like that. And then I wish Chris Kennedy were here. He loves when there's a slide up there and the presenter says, I know you can't really read that very well because it's so small, but I did try to put a lot on one slide. But these I wanted to point out, these are the capital equipment expenditures that are included in this draft of the budget. And I wanted to give you all the detail of what it is, what fund it is coming out of, and within that fund, what department it's coming out of, so that you can get an idea of the requests that are coming from each of the departments. And while there isn't, the department heads are not here tonight to talk about these requests in the budget, they will be here on the 3rd. And you can obviously ask any questions between now and then to get some clarification on the requests that are included in the proposed budget. But as you can see, there's a few items on here from the PD, several from the streets and parks departments, the CTF fund, that's the Conservation Trust Fund. We have a few pieces of equipment, mainly to take care of the parks and things like that. Capital Improvement Fund, that will be the new fund that we establish at the next board meeting. And the idea of that is to transfer money from the general fund, one-time funds, so that we don't rely on those one-time revenues per se in the general fund, get them out of the general fund and treat that capital improvement fund like a savings account. as Steve pointed out, he said, you know, we're probably going to be spending that money every year. And it is going to take some time, you know, for that fund to get built up because we do have a lot of projects and a lot of needs and a lot of expenses coming up ahead of us. I mean, we are potentially in a very high growth stage for the town. And so there's not going to be a lot of money building up in that account, but it will be good to get the money just out of the general fund so that you don't rely on that in there. And so the one big project coming out of that one in 2024 will be some signalization at the Bonanza Street. And I don't think that's probably enough money. I keep hearing it going up and up. So that number may change, but that's what's in the capital improvement fund. And then the water fund and the sewer fund, those items in there are just the ones, basically, those are not ones that Wayne with Ramey Environmental has put into the budget. These are the ones that our staff here, mainly Chris Larman, has put in that are broken between the general fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund, some pieces of equipment that we're going to allocate the costs of amongst the different funds because they will be used for different items. And so that's how we're spreading the cost out. So that's the capital equipment expenditures. The next slide are the projects. So we will be wrapping up with the Greenway Trail. The bid opening was last week. And so I think there'll be probably a presentation on that, maybe on the 19th, of what the bids came in at. As I understand, we have a range of construction cost bids that are very, very good. They didn't come in as bad as what we had anticipated. So hopefully we can save some money there and it won't be as costly of a project. But the 50,000 that will be carried over to 2024, CDOT usually wants that amount retained until the project is closed out. So until all the paperwork's done and everything's been signed off on, they keep that much back. So that's why there's going to be a little bit in 2024. And then we have the County 4 bridge replacement and the contribution to County Route 2 improvements. Part of that will be paid out this year. The 78,000 will be, it's going to be split between 2023 and 2024. Then the next one are the building improvements. This building, while beautiful and relatively new, is getting older. And so as things age, we're going to have to be investing more money in some repairs and things like that. So the ones that Chris has identified for next year would be doing some seal coating in the parking lot, and that's going to be split between admin and the police departments. And then some work being done on the public works shop to stop heating the great outdoors, as I like to say. So, you know, got to plug those holes in the roof. So those are the building improvements. Again, as this building ages, we're going to be seeing, as Chris always likes to remind me, we're going to be seeing more expensive things, especially if the HVAC goes out and some of those more costly repairs. So we're going to be seeing that each year. The next slide are the studies, and we've got a lot of studies, a lot of things that we're going to be wrapping up, things that we might be starting new. So the comprehensive plan update will continue into next year. We have an ADA transition plan, which that's a requirement. We've got to start working on that. I think we have some deadlines by the end of June of next year in order to do some ADA required improvements. One of them being changes and additions to the website, but this also includes many other things, which Chris could speak to better than I, but it includes things at the parks and things that were identified by CIRSA when we had our recent audit. So that's 10,000, I believe, to have a plan done up by Martin & Martin to identify all the issues.
So I'm still working on getting a finalized cost on that, but I would suspect that it's probably going to be a multi-year plan. I don't think 10,000 is going to cover the full scope because we have to cover all public areas through town, identify any deficiencies, and then create a plan of attack, if you will, on how we're going to address them and remedy. So still working on getting a cost for next year, but it's going to be a multi-year endeavor.
So there are several other studies up there which the various department heads would probably know more about than I would right now. For example, the condition, pavement condition assessment, Chris would probably be the best one to talk to you about that one. The financial plan, URA, GID, that's obviously one I will have some work on and be assisting with on that one. The facility study and economic development, those were two items that were in the current budget. And I left them in there. Whether or not we proceed forward with those will kind of be up to you all to see if we want to pursue those. Construction standards and specifications updates, that's another one that Chris Larman has put in that he sees a need to do. And as you can see, a lot of these are spread amongst all of the different funds because it will impact all of the funds of the town. So now getting into the fun stuff, the numbers and the charts and the graphs and the pretty things, that's what I kind of like to play with and see. So your first pie chart on the left-hand side is your sources of funds. So that's where all of our revenues are coming from. As you can see, we get the most revenue from our sales tax. That's our biggest source of revenue right now. The next one being charges for services. And that's, that's basically our bill backs and things like that. So that's a revenue coming in, but it's also a revenue going out. So that's a little on the deceiving side. Property taxes, grants, a lot of the grants obviously are the one-time things. Our building use tax. The thing I want you to look at this is a lot of this is development driven. So you've got the building use tax, some of the licenses and permits, things of that nature, the fees. So those are all high because we are anticipating right now about 200 houses next year. And so those revenues will be high. And it's a portion of those revenues associated with development, which are very much one-time revenues that I'm recommending get moved to the capital improvement fund. And so I'm using a formula of saying, here's our revenue coming in from these one-time things, especially associated with development. And then here are the expenses associated with it. And then I'm saying, let's move 30 to 50% of that to the capital improvement fund to get it out of the general fund so that we don't continually rely on that development revenue to fund the general fund. So that's the sources of our funds. The uses of our funds, obviously wage and benefits. That's the big one. And that's pretty typical of most organizations that you see. Around a third of your expenses are in the wage and benefit realm. So we're not unusual in any respect with that. The other ones would be operation professional services. That would be all of our outside consultants. So those are the main big uses of our funds also. Then the next one, go ahead.
I'm just curious. So I'm assuming that the wage and benefits is including those extra 5 people. Yeah. Okay.
And professional services are just the attorneys.
They can't stick up for themselves. So the next one, I usually like to do this chart just to show that this is just the general fund. And this just shows basically expenses by department. So it'll show you which departments are your largest departments in the town. And while it shows streets as the largest, I think you can safely say that the police is probably our largest one because the police, the street one has a lot of one-time big expenditures for capital projects and things of that nature. That's usually what drives the streets budget up. Whereas the police budget, that's mostly wage and benefit. Their fees for the IGAs for the victims thing and the dispatch and things like that keep the department running. So those are your 2 largest ones, then followed by community development. And again, that one's driven by development. So when we have estimated 200 and some houses being sold next year, the expenses in that department will be higher. And then all the rest of them are pretty much spread out a little bit. Administration is the next highest. But I just find this as a useful chart for you all to see where exactly the money is spent with the town,
And
specifically in the
This
general
this
fund.
little slice here transfers out.
That would be what's going to the capital improvement fund.
Okay.
So since wage and benefits is our largest chunk of expense, I decided I'd do a slide or two on it showing how much over the last 2 or 3 years the wage and benefit piece has grown. And as you can see, from 2023 to 2024, there will be an increase if we add those 5 additional people. So that's what's driving most of that. Another thing driving that is we did do a salary survey last year where we did a lot of adjustments in especially PD salaries, some in the public works salaries. And then obviously trying to keep up with inflation. We do have a 5% built in to this year's budget to try to keep in line with our other municipalities and with inflation in general. So that's what is built into the 2024 budget would be those 5 FTEs, any wage and salary adjustments that we come to you with from looking at surveys, and then the 5% increase to keep up with the merit and the CIP or the CPI. So that is our largest, and it is our ongoing, and it is continuing to grow as we grow. So that's why I wanted to point that one out in particular. And on the next side, it's that development is what's paying for a lot of stuff. And so that's kind of it's a double-edged sword. You don't want to rely on development to pay for your ongoing costs. So that's why it's really important for us we got to work really hard on getting more revenue sources in here for the town, and a big chunk of that, and an answer to that would be to get the commercial piece. And I know that's easier said than done, but we really have to work on getting some commercial development in the town to pay for those ongoing costs. And the slide I had, the planning department helped me prepare. So this will show you basically where our planning department is anticipating the development to occur next year, and how many permits we expect to have pulled in each of those developments. So as you can see, we're looking at about 25 in Blue Lake, 93 in the Silver Peaks planning area 4, and about 13 in Silver Peaks East, and then Loch Buoy Station should be built out. So that all of their vacant lots should be sold next year. So we're coming up with about 200 permits that we expect to be issued in 2024. Again, this is going to be fine-tuned. So is the forecast. I'm always asking and looking and poking Sonia and Chris Kennedy, saying, okay, look into your crystal ball. And then we're also reaching out to the developers and asking them, so how many more houses do you expect to sell this year? How many do you feel like are you going to sell next year? We all know interest rates are continuing to go up. Maybe they've peaked. Maybe they'll go back down below 7%. We haven't really seen a slowdown even with those high rates. So we'll see what happens with the local and the national economy, and see how that goes. So as I said below, the following commercial development is currently under review, but it's not included. So I did not include anything in there for Quick Trip, Starbucks, or the Take 5 car wash. So if those happen and construction starts next year, that's just going to be a bonus. That'll be just additional revenue that's not included in here. Some of those I don't like to include because, as we all know, Quick Trips has been on the books for years and years. So I'd rather not include them in there. And then if they happen, that's great. If they don't happen, well, it's not going to affect our budget at least. And then, the new impact. So we are doing an impact study right now, which should be wrapped up this fall. And I just wanted to remind you all that those new impact fees that are going to be generated and derived from the study, they won't affect our current development projects. because we already have agreements with those developers. And so these new impact fees will only be affecting new annexations and new developments. So here are some revenue generating options that staff came up with for the 2024 ballot. And again, you got to be very selective. You can't just load up a whole bunch of taxing questions on the ballot. I think you would probably overwhelm people. The easy one is if we can go to home rule and we can get that passed, the second option on there, that 5.5% property tax revenue levy, it's the annual levy law, that'll go away automatically if we become home rule. So that's the one that hits us every year when we have to take a temporary reduction on our mill levy. I mean, our mill levy is already low at 4.3, and every year we have to decrease that mill levy because all we can do is 5.5% plus growth. And so we're always, butting up against that and having to do a temporary reduction. So if we go to home rule, we would not be subject to that annual levy law anymore. And our mill levy would just be set at 4.3 mills, which is still one of the lowest ones in Weld County or even around anywhere around us. So it would still be a very low taxing amount, but it would help us a little bit on the property tax side. I think it would be very hard to try to pass a mill levy increase in this environment. Nobody is going to want to have their mills increased even more with their assessed values going up so much. And with all the muddiness with Proposition HH, and it's complicated, and I think people are just going to be, too much going on with property taxes. So the other one would be a lodging tax. We've heard that there could be some development, maybe in Lockbuoy Center with a hotel or something like that along those lines. We don't know if we get any of the annexations over off of I-76, possibly hotels out there. We don't know, but a lodging tax is something that's usually pretty easy to pass. The residents don't have to pay for it. And so, while it wouldn't help us right now, if we do get any lodging in the future, that's something that we can look at. I wouldn't make a priority for 2024.
I'm just curious. I know I think I've read about people or municipalities passing lodging taxes that apply to like Airbnbs, stuff like that.
Heather and I were just talking about that. Right. And I don't know how many Airbnbs we have in Lockbuoy. So that is obviously something we'd have to look into to see how that would affect those. And if it would, I'm not really familiar with that. So that's something that staff can check into. On the next slide, use tax. Our use tax right now is just 2%. And I know the town has tried a couple times unsuccessfully to get the use tax to be 4%, which would match our sales tax. And that would only apply to our building materials and motor vehicle sales. So right now, our use tax is half of our sales tax. So that is something that we could go and have an election on to see if we could get that raised to 4% or even 3%. Something higher than the 2% for the building materials and motor vehicle. The last one would be sales tax. Well, the town has a fairly decent sales tax right now with 4%. I mean, it's probably one of the higher sales taxes around. But we could obviously try to raise that and try to say that maybe we do it for streets. For street improvements, a 1% increase for street improvements, or a 1% increase for public safety. I think Brighton has a question on their ballot this year for public safety tax, which is either like a 1.5% maybe increase is what they're going for. And they're saying it's going to be dedicated for public safety. So we know that running the police department is one of our larger expenses, and it's going up and up and up. And so that is one thing that we could look at, maybe going for a 0.5% sales tax increase or a 1% sales tax increase, but identifying what it would be used for. A lot of times you have more success on those types of questions rather than just saying, let's just raise sales tax by 1%. So if you can dedicate that money for a specific thing, then that's usually a better way to get it passed. Another thing we could do is we could do a survey before obviously putting any ballot questions on the November ballot, to try to see what people's, how they feel about things. Would they be willing to raise the taxes up for X or for Y? And to really identify what they would be willing to support. It would be kind of futile to put something on there without first testing to see what people would be willing to pay for. And, maybe we would think it would be great to do for police and do a full percentage, but maybe the public is saying, hey, our streets are more important and need more work. So I do think before any kind of a ballot initiative is set up and any language is developed, that you do survey the public to see what they would like to support. And then again, it will be an election year for you all. And I think there's 4 seats that are going to be up in November of 2024. So keep that in mind. Your citizens are going to be also looking at that. So it's going to be a busy year, and obviously it's a presidential election as well. So 2024 will be a fun election time. So I think the turnout, if nothing else, the turnout will be high.
Fine,
So-
fun.
Entertaining. How's that? It'll be entertaining. So this slide here just shows our general fund reserve balance. We do have a healthy reserve balance. 2022, we ended up at 7.9 million. I'm forecasting about 7.7 million this year. I do think that might go up a little higher. We might even match the 2022 fund balance. And then obviously, we always have a lot of projects and things we want to get accomplished. So it always shows that it's going to go down in the next year. So we have kept a very steady, healthy fund balance. And so I just wanted to point that out to you all, that the general fund is in good shape. And then on to the water fund. Just had the presentation on this. So, I put the logo on there. So I thought that looked good. I did have just Lock Buoy on there first, and I thought, oh no, I better put the logo on. So I put it up there, not knowing that that was going to be part of the discussion. So again, for the water fund, it is all about the elevated water tank. That is going to be the big driving thing in the water fund next year. The next slide does show the other types of capital expenditures that Ramey Environmental, we met with them one afternoon about a month ago, and we went through their capital plan. And here are the expenditures that they're foreseeing. A lot of them are, not too high, and a lot of them are maintenance and just keeping up on the plant. But you can see there are some big ones. The new water plant site to be determined. So if we're going to be building a new water tank, that's something that Wayne has included in there. And then you see the elevated storage tank down below. Again, we are looking at how we're going to finance that. Hopefully we can get about 8 million in a leveraged loan with the state revolving. And then we're going to use our ARPA money, which is about 1.8, 1.9 million. And so right now it's estimated a little over 11. So our contribution would be about 1.5 to 2 million. So if we can get all that other financing in place. And then the sewer fund, it's all about the expansion. You just had a presentation, I believe, not too long ago. So the design is underway. Aqua Engineering is doing the design right now. So the design, I think they anticipate it's going to be done sometime late summer next year, and then going out to bid. And we actually met last week with bond financing people so that we can start talking about issuing bonds. If this is a $30+ million project, $36 million project, we're going to have to be issuing some bonds. So that process will be taking place. They advised us probably March of next year to start the process of getting all the paperwork in and all the bond documents together to issue bonds in the fall or early winter of 2024. And so those, the expenditures for the water treatment, the wastewater treatment plant are smaller because most of the emphasis will be on the design for that expansion. Last but not least, I did up a slide that shows what I'm estimating to be the reserve balances. As I showed you, the general fund is in good shape. The CTF fund, I always appropriate out all of the money, just in case a project does come up that you all want to pursue, whether that be something in a park, or something, maybe designing a skate park, whatever it is that, if something does come up. So that's why I always appropriate out of all of the money. The capital improvement fund, again, that'll be spent on the signals at Bonanza. And then the water and wastewater. As you can see, fund balances in both of those funds are very, very healthy as well. Our bond financing, people that we met with last week said that's a very good, fund balances for both of those. If you wanted to issue bonds, they want to see that you have some good reserve balances. And he said those are very healthy, and should be good for us to get some bonding done. And with that, that's the conclusion of the presentation tonight. Again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to me for sure, or Steve. If it's a particular department, you can reach out to the department head to ask any questions. So if I don't hear any comments or suggestions, I will continue to fine tune the forecast and, fine tune the budget before the October 3rd meeting. And when I bring it back to you at that time.
I don't think this is going to affect anything, so I'm not asking for it for that reason, but I really would like to just see what the price tag is for adding that new staff, what the total wage and benefit number is. And I don't, maybe I just didn't see it, maybe it's in there. The 28 and 29.
Sorry. I do have the salaries listed. So you might be able to see that at least there's salary there, but I could do a summary of here's this, here's the wage, here's the benefit piece on each of those.
That would make me happy. Thank
Okay.
you, Denise.
All right. Anyone have anything else? Go ahead.
I just have a quick question regarding the trash services and what is included in that. Is that where the town pays the trash for all the residents and then you get the payments through us from our water bill, or there's just.
Right, that is for Republic. So yes, that is our, the monthly bills are about $40,000 to them, and that's for all the residential. And they also, do the town hall and the town facilities as well. So yes, you'll see a revenue line item and you'll see the expense line item.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Trustee White, anything?
Yes, thank you. Let me figure out how to lower my hand again. I was just curious, looking back, Denise, when you were going through the slides with the use of funds pie chart there, I am really interested and a bit concerned. You said normal for, a town our size would be about 1/3 of our total expenditures being for wages. But if we're looking at wages and you're telling me that operations is basically contract workers, then that's putting us at 48% that we're paying just for that alone. So I would love to see a breakdown of all the contract work, what we're paying, and would it not be cheaper to staff our own person? That's 15% above the 33% we're already standing at.
Do you want to see how much we spend on legal and engineering? And
No,
those?
no, I thought legal was separate.
No, that's part of the professional services.
I'm not talking about professional services. I'm talking about operations and wage benefits.
Okay, so you want to see what makes up the operations number?
Yes, because did
Okay.
you not state that that was contract workers?
No,
the operations are just basically, you know, your fuel, your utilities. That's all the operations costs.
So where's the contract
Professional
workers get paid?
services, that's where you get the engineering, the legal, all of the outside consultants are under that professional services. Operations are everything else.
Okay, then yes,
expenses
I'm sorry,
for
I misheard you
as I
earlier.
said, fuel, utilities, uniforms, all of those types of expenses.
I'm mostly gonna be just interested in the contract workers we're paying out of that 15% for professional services.
Okay, so I can break.
If I
down
could have
the
a breakdown of that, I'd
engineering.
appreciate it. Other than that, I just would say thank you, and I appreciated the update on the ADA stuff on the website. That was part of the CML notes that I had left over to follow up on. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
Anyone have anything else? No? Anything from you, Steve? All right. All right, thank you very much. I love all the pie charts. All right. And we will move on now to mayor and trustee comments. I'm gonna quickly open it up and just say, love the signs out there for the fall festival. Interest out there, and also Heather reminded me, September 19th at 5 p.m. we'll be having the 50th anniversary meeting. So everybody keep that locked away in your brain. What's that?
Has it been in the calendar and like that?
No. So that's, yeah, and that's all I have. So trustee White, comments?
I have a few, thank you. One, I just wanted to remind, and I'm not sure when the correct part is or when it will get brought to us to talk about, but just as we're talking and making plans of the water tower, I don't want to forget the strong input we had about what the land beneath that will be used for. So I just want to mention that. Oh, here comes Chris, go ahead.
So yeah, that definitely won't be forgotten. The land immediately underneath the water tank is owned by the town, and that'll be dedicated to municipal facilities. The L-shaped area, I think that in the presentation was identified as future park area. That's going to be a developer obligation that'll be addressed in the Silver Peaks North phase of Silver Peak. So when they start developing near and around the water tank, that's when that park will go in.
Okay, perfect. So I'll stop mentioning it. Thank you. Secondly, something I mentioned at the last meeting, I know there were a couple people not there. And I don't see Chief there again today, but I do still want to have him consider the police and the fire department training that's available for the trains that's available through both companies. It was something they talked about at CML. Steve and I sat through that meeting. I just, as I mentioned before, would make us look shinier. So that's just something to keep in mind. I would like to get some feedback from him on his thoughts of doing that, if it's something he would be interested in, as well as the fire department, which I haven't seen here in a while. Third, I'm still curious as to when we will actually have the follow-up meeting that I've been waiting for, I believe since January, that Trustee Cohen has actually mentioned last time as well, for the code, land use, all of that. We still haven't addressed that. It's been 2 or 3 meetings now. Fourth, I would like to mention the skate park. I would just like to know, have we demolished that? When is that going to be demolished? And when are we going to talk about what we're replacing it with? It sounds like people would still like a skate park, but just one that's safer and accessible to everyone. And then lastly, I do want to mention, I've got a crazy letter in the mail. I've seen crazy things on Nextdoor with our drinking water. Are we going to talk about that at all? That would be about it.
Okay, all right, thank you. Trustee Cohen.
Thank you, Denise for the wonderful budget presentation as always. That's all I have.
Trustee Westcott?
Thank you, Denise, for the wonderful budget presentation as always. One of the things I've been wondering about lately, I think it was in March 2022, it might have been, my dates could be wrong. Chris Kennedy did that presentation on projected growth. And then we sort of backed off of it saying, well, the economy's tanked. We don't know what these numbers are going to be. I'd like an update on that just to see what we're thinking. We're going to be at in 5, 10, 15 years like we had before. Also, I think it would be nice if it could be via email, I don't care, but just giving us a regular update on where we're at with the town administrator hiring. I would like that. And that's it. Thank you.
I don't have anything tonight. Thank you.
Trustee Tapey?
Comments, thank you.
And just real quick, actually, I'd asked Steve about that earlier, but if you would kind of fill everyone in real quick on the.
We had 23 applications. We reviewed all those with our leadership team and with the consultant. We narrowed that down to about 10 or 11 that he's going to do video interviews with. He's going to send those back to us next week, review those and filter that again for leadership team interviews, and then give the final 3 to 5 to the board.
Does that mean at that point we would do in-person interviews, or are we just going to be, yeah?
Or we'll do in person, yeah.
Right, and I just had one real quick question, Chris, about the that lot where the tower is going. How much land are we talking over there?
It's just slightly over 3 acres. I
Is it-
think it's 3.14 acres to be precise, but.
Okay, I was curious about that. All right, thank you. All right, and no one else has anything else? I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And we are adjourned at 7:42. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great night.